A lot has happened since our last podcast, Reuben.
Yeah, we take a day off from podcasting and all hell breaks loose.
Yeah, it feels like that. I guess our last podcast was Friday.
Right.
So we've gone a few days here and we have a bunch of news that's kind of piled up. So we want to get to all of it.
We do.
And we will. This is the Eagle Eye Podcast.
We'll talk quickly.
He's Reuben Frank. I'm Dave Zangaro. CJ Gardner-Johnson, gone. The Eagles bring in a couple new free agents. We'll talk about them. We'll try to figure out if they're done at those respective positions. And then a couple other players also leave in free agency. But let's start with CJ Gardner-Johnson, Rube. That was the biggest news over the last few days. Leaving on a one-year deal to Detroit. This has had some drama attached to it.
Like everything that CJ does.
Yeah, there really has been some drama for a while. It looked like they were going to keep him. He was their priority. And then he's tweeting and erasing tweets. And I think we learned why he picked his agent, because they also like to tweet when they probably shouldn't. But Rube, what's your take on this whole saga? What happened here?
Yeah, there's a lot to unpack with this one. I think the biggest thing, and we've kind of speculated about it, and I think we were kind of spot on with our speculation. I think, number one, CJ misjudged his value and the safety market. And I think we all did. But, he had more of a vested interest in it. I mean, we've talked about how the Jesse Bates contract was an outlier and other safeties were getting 5, 6, 7 million. And where would CJ fit in? And obviously, the longer he went without signing somewhere, the more his value went down, and the more, the less the odds he was going to get what he wanted. And I think we disagree a little bit on how good he is. I think he's a good player. I don't think he's a great player. I don't think he's an elite player. I don't think he's going to get 6 interceptions every year. And that season was an exception for him. And he's a young guy, so there's value there. He's going to get better at safety, so there's value there. But I don't think he's a great tackler. I don't think he's the most consistent player we've ever seen. And there's his personality, which could turn some teams off. And there's so much money at stake here. I think teams are really kind of wary of whatever you want to call him, a free spirit. He's not a bad guy. He's never been in trouble, but he will say stuff that, I don't know how many tweets he's deleted over the last week. It's got to be like 5 at least. He says this stuff and then he deletes it. And, I don't know. I think he misjudges how good he is. I think the rest of the league kind of is a little skittish about. Teams want all-American guy. They want a Boy Scout because you're investing this much money in him. You don't want a guy you're going to have to worry about. What's he going to do? What's he going to say? Is he going to get in trouble? So I think he's a good player who took advantage of the opportunities he had when the picks came his way, and that was great. He had, 6 picks in 12 games. What do you have? 5 straight games with an interception. But that's not going to happen every year. So then what do you have if the interceptions aren't there? You have this free spirit safety who will say anything, who's not a good tackler, and might have an inflated opinion of himself. So I really, I think it's you can see both sides of it. There's not a lot of playmakers like him at that position, certainly who are available, but you can see the downside too. And I like the player. And I think you make a great point when you say he's 25, he's playing a new position. He's going to get better. He'll become a better tackler as he learns the angles, which are very different at safety than the slot. He's versatile. He changed positions without complaining. So there's a lot to like about him. But there's also, a lot to be wary of, I guess.
Yeah, I don't know if I'd necessarily buy that there's a ton to be wary of. I get that he's a free spirit, but he's never caused any problems. He played here for an entire season. It took some getting used to initially, but I look at it and
I'm not saying he causes problems. I'm saying the league might have looked at him that way. I'm not I mean, he hasn't been a problem, and he hasn't gotten in trouble. But I'm just trying to understand why his value dropped maybe more than we anticipated, and it could be because the league views him that way. That's my point.
Yeah, I don't know if that's true though, because I think the value of safeties league wide, aside from one contract, was really low this year. So I don't know if we can really read into, like, was he the reason, or was it just the position in general was devalued in this cycle? I think you're right about him. His agents really misreading the market and thinking that there was going to be more available. We know the Eagles offered him a contract. We don't know necessarily what that contract looked like. His agency, which, look, I try not to rip agents who are trying to get money for their players, but that's a bad look for an agency to tweet out details of a negotiation, which, let's be honest, it didn't make any sense. Like, there aren't contracts structured like that. So maybe there was just some miscommunication there, but whatever they offered him, they didn't think it was enough, and they tried to find it elsewhere. Very rarely your value goes up the deeper in the free agency. Normally, like, the best offer you're going to get might be one of those early offers. You try to hammer it out.
B.J. Edwards.
Quickly. Yeah. I mean, well, that's not maybe not the best example, because that wasn't the the biggest deal. But I mean, typically, like, your big money
more, but
yeah. Well, maybe. I mean, typically your big money deals are the ones that come out early, because that's teams are spending. They have the money to spend, and they're spending it on the guys they consider priorities. Now, I do believe that at one point CJ was a priority for the Eagles. I think they've made that really clear, and I think he should have been, because the list of pending free agents they had, he was the one where you felt like, you give this guy a 3-year deal, he might be playing his best ball at the end of that deal. I don't know if that's true of any of those other players. So for that reason, he was always, like, really an attractive free agent. And you look back at this, and I think it might have hurt both sides that he's not here. Like, I don't think there are winners in this.
I agree.
I think some of it's ego, and there was a report from Jim Trotter. I don't know the veracity of it. I haven't been able to verify it, that that CJ's camp offered the Eagles a chance to match that 1 year up to $8 million deal. We have to try to find out what happened there. Maybe we'll get some answers next week at the owners' meetings, because if they had a chance to match that and they didn't match it, why?
Yeah, and one possible reason is because in the interim, they obviously signed a bunch of guys, and we don't know how much money. But I think it's more likely that the reason they didn't sign them or didn't match that offer, and we don't know the veracity of the report, but I think.
See, if you were doing this podcast in a library, you'd be able to find a dictionary and look that up.
Yeah, I'm not allowed. I've been banned. From my local library. But I think there's a chance that just the relationship between the agent and Howie and his staff had deteriorated by that point. It seems like, I mean, just a tweet from the agency kind of indicates that there's, and this is obviously after the fact, but I think there's a chance that the relationship was already starting to go bad when the Eagles' initial offer didn't come anywhere close to what CJ was expecting. So that, and then it just got, it just kind of fell apart from there. I'm just speculating, but that kind of stuff happens. The agent could have said, well, I mean, who knows? I mean, I don't know, but that kind of stuff happens in these negotiations. Feelings get hurt. Bridges are burned. And so by the time the agent's like, well, you can match this. I mean, the Eagles had moved on for some reason, and it could have been financial. It could have been that they just had kind of a relationship with the agent that kind of got beyond the point where they wanted to do the deal.
Yeah, maybe it's a little confusing in a way, though, because I think it hurts both of them. I really do, because if CJ, like, we know he was productive, and look, the defense has changed, but it's still, we think, a similar structure. He knows a lot of his teammates here. He was productive here. So Look, I don't think he's in a bad spot in Detroit. That's a team that seems to be on the rise. He gets to play for a coordinator that knows him very well, and maybe he'll be fine and he'll get that big deal next year. But I also wonder, like, man, if he couldn't get it this year, where, look, I don't think he was a great safety, but the numbers were very good. And typically guys get paid off their numbers. Yeah, I was surprised he didn't. I was surprised about a lot of the way this went down, honestly.
Yeah, me too. And I totally agree that it's something that hurts both. I mean, I agree that the Lions are kind of an up and coming team in the NFC, but I mean his chances of going into another Super Bowl are greater here. They just are, and the Eagles are a better team with him. Say what you want about them, they're a better team with him. And we'll see who ends up at safety when all's said and done in September. But it's a loss. It's a significant loss.
Yeah, I really thought there was a chance to bring him back. And I really go back to the beginning of it, and the safety market was just so weak. Just so weak. And a few years ago, it was really crazy. Like that Marcus Williams deal was outrageous. And then for it to just drop off like this year. Now, I know people are giving Howie a ton of credit for reading it correctly. He did, but they also lost the player. So, reading the market is one thing, but if you lose the player in the process, it doesn't do you much good. Now, Howie is very good about finding other ways to build the roster, where some GMs would lose the player and then just be screwed. I feel like Howie has ways to recoup that loss and to be creative, whether it's signing another free agent or trading for a player. And we'll get into some of those options later, but there's still a long time before they play a game. But I just look back and think, all the moves they've made this offseason, like they're mostly 1-year deals, except for the two cornerbacks who are both, one's 32, one's 29. So this was your one chance to get a long-term deal with a guy who's still young, and they couldn't do it. And that's disappointing. Like, I think they'll be okay. I still think they're in a very good spot with this year and this roster, and they have a ton of picks. I think overall the franchise is in a good position, but I think it does hurt losing out on this opportunity.
Yeah, you want as many young guys under contract as you can, and he's, have a guy with that much experience who's only 25 and just turned 25. It has a lot of value. The question I get from a lot of people is, if you're going to pay Fletcher, who's 32, $10 million, why wouldn't you want CJ for that much money? I mean, a 25-year-old safety would seem to be more valuable than a 32-year-old interior lineman, and I don't have an answer for that. I'd rather have, if I had $10 million, it's not even a knock on Fletcher, who did have 7 sacks last year, but interior linemen make more than safeties. That's just a reality. So on the scale of, where they line up, Fletcher is, Fletcher would be, is not as highly paid as CJ would have been. But, if I could have one player or the other, I'd rather have CJ.
Yeah, I mean, both would be starters. You're right about the nature of the positions. Defensive tackles get paid more. That's just what it is. But it's also like a timing thing. We've talked about timing in free agency before. Sometimes the timing just doesn't line up. And the Eagles did pivot. I mean, once they didn't get CJ to accept that deal, they brought back Bradbury, and then they figured out Slay, and they signed BG, and they signed Fletcher. And all of a sudden, like, that deal that they offered him is gone. So by the time you get to 1 year up to $8 million, it's like, yeah, maybe, but like we're kind of past this already.
Yeah. And, I think we disagree on this, whether you'd rather have, if you could have one or the other, would you rather have Bradbury or CJ? And I've said Bradbury, you've said CJ, I think. I think so.
Which is tough because it is apples to oranges. But
It is. And it's also financial apples to oranges as well as player apples to oranges. So it's multiple fruit differentials.
But what never made sense to me? Like, why would you compare two apples? They're the same thing. Apples and oranges shows contrast.
Yeah, I guess the thinking is that, if you're going to compare two things, compare things that
Yeah, I know. I get
are
it.
similar conceptually. Like this apple looks red and delicious. This apple's got a big dent in it. So
Yeah. What's
this
your
is
favorite kind of apple?
Eli apple.
Oh,
My
no
favorite
one's
kind of
ever.
apple?
Yeah.
It's probably delicious, red delicious. Yeah.
Oh, Honeycrisp is better.
Yeah, it's a good apple. Um, I like to slice up an apple a lot and just
Okay.
eat it, like eat apple wedges.
I don't think anyone's ever done that before. That's pretty good.
But I mean, just like if it's between eating an apple whole, which sometimes I'll do that if I'm too lazy to slice it up. But I kind of like apple wedges. But I'm comparing apples to apples here.
Yeah. I don't know. It's a shame though. It's a shame it didn't work out with CJ.
It is. I wish him well. And It was interesting watching his presser out in I don't even know where the Lions facility is. Is it in Auburn Hills or something, or Troy? I don't know. But anyway,
Michigan.
He was so like going out of his way to be non-controversial and just boring. And then he sends out another tweet ripping Eagles fans and then deletes that one. So who knows? It's going to be a fun year. He'll be deleting tweets throughout the season.
Yeah, the Eagles are left with just AJ Brown, who's a quick deleter of tweets.
Yeah. Maybe one of the new guys, will show a proclivity to delete.
Eagles
tweets.
are look for that in the pre-draft process. Like, oh, he's only deleted 15 tweets this year. We need someone who's up to like the 25 range.
I don't think I've ever deleted a tweet other than like if it's got a bad typo or something.
Yeah, well, if I notice it right away, like a bad typo, I'll delete it.
Yeah, I hate
These
when you
guys
get
have to know that it's not really deleted, right? Like they have to know that. You're a professional athlete. People see it, they screenshot it, and then it gets like more notoriety because you deleted it.
Right.
Because everyone's like, oh, I want to see what he's deleted. He thought he had to delete this tweet, so it must be something juicy.
I'm gonna when I tweet out the pod later, I'm gonna delete that tweet and just see if I get a little buzz going.
I'll call you out for it. That'll really get the wheels in motion.
Yeah, let's do it. All right.
Eagles signed a guy.
They did.
Well, they signed a couple guys. We'll talk about the linebacker first, who I think is a little more consequential.
Yeah.
Nicholas Morrow.
Nicholas Morrow has a lot of experience at a position where the Eagles had none, virtually none. Not a great player, and I don't think he's not a lock to be a starter, but he was a full-time starter last year in Chicago, and he's okay. He's not TJ Edwards. He's probably more of a Kaiser White. I mean, the TJ comparison's the fun one because TJ went to Chicago, and they both played college football, and TJ played high school football in Illinois. Morrow played college football in Illinois. They're both undrafted. So it's kind of a neat little parallel, but Morrow's probably more of the TJ or the Kaiser White position. But yeah, I mean, this is the kind of guy that you bring him in, and I think all these guys they've brought in from other teams let's take a look at them and, depth piece at the least. I think unlike the other guys, you're pretty sure he'll be on the team. But at the worst, he'll be a special teamer and a backup and have a chance to be a starter.
Yeah, it makes sense. And he was I did a list of potential signings at linebacker and safety, and he was one of the linebackers I had on here. It makes sense. He's still relatively young. He's 27, so he's not like at the super end of his career. He played fairly well last year, started all 17 games, which is a big deal. He missed the entire 2021 season. So I think like when you get to this point in free agency, a lot of these signings are just to make sure that Howie doesn't have to draft for need.
Right.
You at least want some stopgaps in place, and you don't know if it's going to work out, but it's likely a pretty low risk 1-year deal, and you go from there and you bring him to camp. He has a chance to start. Now, the Eagles have not had a great track record with 1-year linebackers. Kaiser ended up being one of the better ones, which tells you how bad some of the other ones have been.
Yeah.
I don't need to say the names, do I?
It's kind of fun.
Okay. Zach Brown, Paul Warlow, Corey Nelson.
That kind of guy.
Yeah.
LJ Fort.
Yeah, LJ. Well, who ended up playing well, not here. Yeah, but there have been a lot of those guys, and honestly, Morrow's kind of like similar in terms of like where he is in his career. He's a
Yeah.
little younger than some of those guys. Had
Yeah,
some injuries.
I wouldn't get my hopes real high. I think, he's a guy. He's a body. He's inexpensive, and you see what we can do. And we'll see. But I wouldn't have super high expectations.
Yeah, but he does have a chance to start.
He does.
We'll see if they add anything else at the spot. But I mean, I wouldn't shock me if he's the starter next to Nakobe Dean in week 1.
Yeah, I think. I mean, right now he's the favorite based on what they have on the roster. I mean, you're looking at, Davion Taylor and Christian Ellis and Sean Bradley. I really want to see a good long look at Christian Ellis. I think he's a really physical guy. We saw that in brief snippets in on special teams and a couple snaps, very few on defense. But I want to get a long look at him in camp. But for now, yeah, very little experience at that position. I think all their off-ball linebackers combined had 8 career starts until they brought in Morrow, and that was Davion had 7, and I think Sean Bradley started that Dallas game at the end of the 2021 season, and that's it. So he's certainly more experienced than anyone else they have, and and Nakobe he's a question mark. I mean, I like him. I think he'll be a really good player, but if your starting linebackers are Nicholas Morrow and Nakobe Dean, that's a leap of faith right there.
Yeah, I agree with you. I mean, what do you think? Do you think they're done at linebacker now?
I would never say how he's done at any position. We'll see what happens. We know his track record as far as drafting them. But guys are going to get cut. Guys are going to get cut in final cutdowns. Guys are going to come available. There could be a guy playing in Canada. I mean, Howie gets really creative at certain positions. You could find a rugby player in Australia who looks like a linebacker. So, or a plumber in Australia. You get hey, Matt, do you know any linebackers down there? So I would never say how he's done at any position until the trade deadline.
Undersized guy, Morrow. Like 6 foot, 225.
Yeah,
does that worry you?
Like 218, 220.
Yeah, I mean, does that worry you if you have him and Nakobe out there? You have 2 undersized linebackers.
Does that Warlow? It does. It
Warlow you? Yeah.
I don't know if you can. Yeah, that's
like you might be okay in coverage, but
yeah. And Morrow's grades. I mean, I always take PFF for what it's worth, but his coverage grades are not ideal. I think Nakobe's going to be a really good cover linebacker. And we'll see. We don't know, but it does concern you. That's why Christian Ellis, he's my guy. What is he, like 235?
They list Christian Ellis at 231. They list him as the same weight as Nakobe Dean, which is hard to believe.
There's no way. Christian Ellis is 20 pounds heavier than Nakobe.
Yeah, sometimes these weights are a little.
Yeah. I mean, you've seen Nakobe in the locker room without any pads on. What do you think he is? 225?
Yeah.
220?
Yeah.
I think Christian Ellis is 240, but we'll see.
We'll see. So I have some names in front of me still. Yeah. Do you think there's a chance I sign one of these guys? I'll go through them. I'll just tell you the list. Bobby Wagner is kind of the high model here because he's future Hall of Famer. Still has something left at 32. Denzel Perryman, Anthony Walker, Zach Cunningham, Miles Jack, which I probably wouldn't do. Rashaan Evans.
I mean, Wagner's interesting because obviously his past. I would guess he's a guy who, if he's still out there, in June and his price comes down, that's the kind of guy Howie might be interested in.
I think people who haven't watched him play don't realize how good he's been.
Oh, yeah.
Like he is surefire, no doubt Hall of Famer.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. Great player. So, I I'd love to see that. I just don't know what he's looking for money wise. A guy like that. That's why the Sue and Linval Joseph, especially Sue, that he was willing to take such a small deal. Because some of these guys, if they're, I mean, Sue's a multiple. I mean, he's a possible Hall of Famer. Sometimes those guys are like, I'm not signing for $2 million. I'm cutting the time of Con Sue. So I don't know what Wagner's thinking, but I'd certainly love to see him here.
Yeah. The other ones are, Perriman, Walker, both have some familiarity with Sirianni, actually. Walker and Indy, Perriman and San Diego or LA?
Just say Chargers.
Chargers, yeah. In Southern California. So I don't know. There's some interesting names. Morrow was on the list. But yeah, I don't know. There aren't a ton of intriguing. I think there are more intriguing options still at safety than there are at linebacker.
Yeah, and I definitely would like to see competition in camp. I mean, I certainly wouldn't expect them to just give Nicholas Morrow a job.
No, yeah, you wouldn't think so. And look, there's not free agency. There's a draft too. So they don't have a ton of picks, but if they trade down from 30 and pick up a couple mid-round picks, like you could see them using one of those on a linebacker, right?
Imagine if after going 43 years without a first-round linebacker, how he takes one at 10 and at 30.
I don't like the odds there.
Probably not real high.
All right. Catch all the sports action and more at Rivers Casino Philadelphia. Whether it's the money line or the pass line, there's something for everyone in the great sports book. Rivers Casino Philadelphia. Philly loves a winner. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. For the other signing, Justin Evans. It came out the day after we learned CJ Gardner-Johnson was leaving, so I think some fans were panicked. Like, is this their replacement for CJ? No, he's not. He's a depth signing. And that's fine. Like low risk guys, you bring them in, you throw them against the wall, and you see if they stick.
Yeah, and again, you go in with no expectations. He doesn't cost anything. It's like a lot of these signings. But this is the position Howie's in right now. I mean, he doesn't have a ton of money to go around for guys at this point. Spend it all or most of it. He's got Jalen coming up. So you go bargain hunting. You look for those guys who might be able to offer something, probably won't. But if they don't work out, you're not really, it's costing you maybe a few $100,000 against the cap. So they're all kind of similar moves. Safety's kind of like linebacker. They need bodies there.
Yeah, and that's a good point. It's not about just replacing CJ and Marcus Epps. It's about, all right, well, if Reed Blankenship's one of your starters, you need someone to replace Reed Blankenship. You need that extra guy on the bench, and Justin Evans might offer that. He's 27, former second-round pick in 2017. Injuries really derailed his career. He played in 2017, played in 2018, did not play in 19, 20, or 21, goes to the Saints last year and plays a little bit. He was a rotational player, started 4 games, gave them a little bit.
Yeah, it's a long time to be out. And you give him credit for sticking with it and coming back and playing. You like to see that. But, again, I just don't know. And, I mean, who are their other safeties? I mean, Kayvon Wallace, they just don't have bodies. Who do you think's more likely to have like a really long, successful career? Reed Blankenship or Nakobe Dean?
Nakobe.
It's interesting that, I mean, you would say a third round guy from Georgia, but I was actually tweeted about this. I was waiting for the Sixers to come on, and I hit the wrong channel, and I hit NFL Network by mistake, and the Eagles-Packers game was on, and I watched it for I probably watched like the whole half the second quarter and the third quarter, and Reed Blankenship, and that was the first time he played, was that game. He was unbelievable. He had one tackle on Aaron Jones. He came out of nowhere. Aaron Jones looked like he had like 20 yards, and he just came out of nowhere and threw him for like a 2-yard gain. And it was like, oh my goodness. And he just made a bunch of plays like that. Obviously, he had a pick in that game too. I'm really bullish on him. I think he has a chance to be a really good player. I think Nakobe does too. And I'd probably give the same answer if presented with that question. But look, they're going to have to rely on these guys. And you wrote a piece on that about, the young guys. And, we're all kind of penciling them in there, but we don't know. I mean, they're all giant question marks.
Yeah. And that's why you would even hesitate and say Reed, because we've at least seen some sort of body of work from him, and it was pretty good. I mean, it was, we've seen more of Reed Blankenship than we have Nakobe Dean
right
in an Eagles uniform. So we'll find out what they really think of Reed, because their moves throughout free agency, that whatever's left of it, and then in the draft will tell us if they think he could be a starter or if they think he's better suited to be in that third spot. But I mean, right now he's a starter with Kayvon Wallace, and your top safety off the bench is either Justin Evans or Andre Sachere. So the work to be done at that position. I don't think they're done in free agency at that position.
I would even guess. Well, I guess Kayvon, if they had to line up ones right now, I guess Kayvon would be one over Evans. But
yeah,
I don't know. I mean, I like Kayvon more than most people, but I mean, he hasn't played much.
Yeah, but you're comparing him to a guy who didn't play in 3 years.
Yeah, but he played more last year than Kayvon.
Okay.
But the point is, that like you said, there is work to be done there.
Yeah. I have a list of guys here.
Safeties.
What
do you got?
Talk about them. And this is a list that I think all these guys are still available unless I've missed any moves, but these are all free agents. And then we'll get to one guy who could shake loose as a trade target, but John Johnson, Adrian Amos, Taylor Rapp, Jalen Mills, Rodney McLeod, Terrell Edmonds, all free agents.
Rodney was all over my Twitter last night.
Yeah. And look, I put Rodney on here. I don't know if that would fit as here's Rodney. He's a starter. I'll tell you what, though, at 32 last year, he played at a really high level, maybe his best season ever. I wouldn't mind bringing Rodney back on a cheap deal as a veteran third safety, and decide, at least the last time we saw him as a DC, ran a decent amount of three safety looks. I think Rodney would thrive in that, Corey Graham role.
Yeah, I agree. And I really like Rodney, and he played great last year.
They love him in Indy.
Yeah. Yeah. So I'd love to see it. People started bashing Rodney on my Twitter, and he came on. He was and kind of made, stood up for himself. But Rodney's a good player, and I don't really get I thought he was a really good, solid player here.
Yeah, he was.
I didn't
got overshadowed by Malcolm a lot. Now, I don't think I want to make it very clear. I don't think this is Rodney. Here you are. Start. That's not what I'm saying. But it's a depth piece. Yeah, I wouldn't mind that.
Yeah. What about Jalen?
Jalen Mills. Interesting. I also don't know if that's the best idea to just bring him in and start him, but he would have value. Versatile defensive back, has played everywhere on the field. I think a lot of people have a feeling about Jalen because he was forced to be a starting cornerback on this team when he should not have been a starting cornerback, especially with it's funny now that you think the Jim Schwartz corners were so weak in a defense that really could have used high level corners. And now they have really good corners and they play this lighter zone scheme where you're probably not as important. It's still very important, the position, but it's just funny to me that,
That's funny. Jalen's a guy Jalen Mills, that is, who always got the most out of his ability. And he was never, a super impressive physical as far as, running and stuff. And he would get beat on double moves, but he's a great red zone defender where speed doesn't really matter as much, and came up big at some huge moments. Won a Super Bowl with him. We know how he loves to bring back guys.
Yeah, sometimes to his own detriment.
Yeah, no doubt. but he loves to bring back guys. So either one of those comes back, either one of those guys, Rodney or Jalen. And I think Jalen makes more sense. And, and I'm a huge Rodney McLeod guy, but I think Jalen makes more sense just because, he's a little younger and his versatility. But, yeah, either one would be certainly valuable.
Yeah, I could see Jalen as a depth piece. Maybe not the starter. Some of these other guys I think would be plug-and-play starters, whether it's John Johnson is still young enough where you could offer him a multi-year deal. He's still 27, so you'd feel good about that. Amos would probably be a one-year stopgap type of option, but he has the history with Desai from their time together in Chicago. Probably on the downswing of his career, but if you need to get a year out of him, I think you could. Taylor Rapp is an interesting one. He's younger than all these guys. He's 25, so I don't know at this point if you'd get him on a multi-year deal, he might want to say, no, I want a 1 year so I can hit the market and hopefully the market looks better next year, but I think that would be a decent option. Edmonds, I don't like as much. I think he's more of a one-position guy, but there are options. And Kevin Byard is the other one who is not a free agent, but we've heard there's a little bit of contract dispute with the Titans, and Eagles made a pretty big trade with the Titans last year because the guy couldn't get a deal with them.
Yeah, and the Titans haven't lived it down, so they might not be in a real hurry to answer Howie's calls.
New GM.
Yeah, that's true. Same franchise.
Same franchise.
I don't know what they're looking for. I don't know if it does come down to a trade.
Yeah, I don't know. Well, apparently, so the Schefter tweet that I can't. There it is. Okay. The Schefter tweet said the Titans approached Kevin Byard about a pay cut, but the Pro Bowl safety does not believe his play warrants a decrease in salary. I'll interject here and say he's correct. Byard has wanted to play for one organization and ultimately retire as a Titan, but the two sides are at a crossroads per source. The Titans have kind of cleaned house this offseason. Their salary cap move. They're chopping and getting rid of players. Byard he's not old, but he's not young either, and he might not factor into their future. So if he shakes free, Eagles have to at least be interested.
Sure. Not a lot of picks to trade. So Howie doesn't like trading picks. But he will do it if it's worth it. So certainly one to keep an eye on.
And the Eagles could have a safety duo from Middle Tennessee State.
That's true. I don't think that's ever happened.
I mean, I haven't looked it up, but it's hard to imagine that's happened.
Yeah. You know what else has never happened? This is the first time. Well, once the regular season starts and Devontae and Marcus Mariota are both on the roster, it'll be the first time they've ever had two Heisman Trophy winners on the team at the same time. Tebow and Bradford were in training camp together, but Tebow got cut after the final cut. So,
wow, that's neat.
Yeah, I thought that was a cool little thing.
Yeah, I've been trying to go through the other ones I know they've had, and you're right. Vince Young was the first one that popped into my head.
Let's not even go there.
OVY. They're not done at safety, right? Can't be.
No, they can't be done at safety. I don't think they're done at either linebacker or safety.
Yeah, I don't either. Met Greedy Williams on Tuesday.
Kid.
Seems like a nice kid. You know what? It stuck out to me. Very long. I know he's 6'2", but looks it. He definitely looks like a long corner. Look, we saw him on the practice field last year too in Cleveland, but I'm curious to see where he kind of ends up in the pecking order when they get to camp.
Yeah, it's a good question. He's we know, some of these other guys were like, he has a chance to start, he has a chance to get cut, he has a chance to be a role player. We know Greedy's not going to start, so it kind of changes the conversation. But yeah, we'll see. He's a decent player, and Zach McPherson. I mean, we just kind of. Look, he's a name, and we're like, yeah, Zach McPherson's next in line, but We'll see. I would guess that Greedy's going to be the third outside corner.
Oh, really? I think they'll compete for that job.
I do too. But I
You
think
think they'll win
I
it?
think when all is said and done, Greedy will be that guy.
Interesting. I don't know. I don't know how that'll shake out. That'll be a fun battle, though.
Yeah. And
given the age of the two corners in front of them, we'll probably get a good sense in camp because there'll probably be a day where like Slay doesn't practice, and we'll see who they put with the first team.
Yeah, but Bradbury might not practice that day either. So we'll see both of them.
Stagger that.
We'll see both of them. We won't know who's ahead, but it's definitely going to be something. All those positions are going to be really, really interesting in training camp. Safety, linebacker, and corner. There's just so much fluidity there. So many questions to answer.
You know what I wanted to bring up that it kind of goes back to safety, but I've had people ask me about it, and I think it is an intriguing thought. Avonte Maddox. I think it's fair to say it's generally
just move CJ back into the slot.
Well, you'd have to find a slot, whether it's Josiah Scott or someone else. But I think it's fair to say it's like generally easier to find a nickel corner than it is a starting safety. And I've always liked the idea of Avonte at safety. We saw him do it a little bit last year, but really as a rookie back in 2018, we saw him play quite a bit at safety. I don't hate that idea. Now, he might say, yeah, I'm getting paid. You guys paid me like a nickel. I want to get paid like a safety. But if you have to throw him a few extra bucks and you think that's your best option, I think there's a thought process to that.
Yeah, I mean, then you'd have to replace him. I'm not sure Josiah Scott can. And I like the way Josiah Scott battles. He's certainly a competitive guy. He's a physical guy, but we've also seen him have some meltdowns out there.
Yeah, I mean, I just threw out his name because he's the guy here. But you can find another nickel.
Can you find another nickel like Avonte? Avonte, when he's healthy, is very. That's the other concern about him. He just can't stay healthy. He was on IR 3 times last year or something, or he missed games 3 times. Can't be on IR 3 times, but in theory, I like it. I worry about replacing him as a nickel and his health and missing time.
Yeah, but you got to worry about either spot. Yeah.
But I'm sure you can handle safety.
Yeah, I've always, you're probably annoyed by hearing me say it. I really liked him as safety in 2018. Well, Bob Sanders back there.
Yeah. We'll see. We'll see if it's something on their minds.
Probably not,
but it's an interesting thing to think about.
Last one, a couple more Eagles left the nest, so to speak. Isaac Seumalo and Zach Pascal. Isaac Seumalo going to the Pittsburgh Steelers. Zach Pascal going to the Arizona Cardinals.
Yeah, and we knew Seumalo was gone really as soon as they drafted Juergens, and we knew they were giving him reps at guard. It was kind of a done deal. And we knew Isaac was going to get a decent amount of money. I mean, he wasn't going to be here. I kind of thought Pascal was going to be gone as well. I don't think he was as good as I don't know. It was a weird year, and Sirianni loves him. I just think they need more firepower at that spot.
I get your point there, but he was the fourth receiver.
I understand that, but I just don't know what he gives you as the fourth receiver. I'd like the fourth receiver at least be, especially because Quez had so many issues with drops and fumbles and just lack of production. Felt like they needed a better 4 since the 3 was struggling so much. Just that position beyond Devontae and AJ, they just didn't get much. And I just would like to see him upgrade there. Obviously, Quez is still under contract. I think he'll be here. And, he's a kid you root for. He's really accountable about his season. You talk to him in locker cleanout day. But I don't, and he certainly played better 2 years ago. So we'll see what happens with him. But Pascal gives you a lot, and he's a great leader and locker room guy and physical and a good blocker. He's great in the run game down the field. But I'd like to see him upgrade there, and we'll see what they do.
Yeah, I mean, I think it sounds like you want them to upgrade at the third receiver.
Just the position in general beyond 1 and 2.
Okay. Yeah. I think that makes it like I get your point. I think it makes it tough when you have the top two receivers who need volume.
No, it's true. That's true. I think they need another receiver somewhere, whether it's a second tight end, whether it's Gainwell being a big part of the passing game. I just think they need more than Goddard and the two receivers. Yeah, and I mean, those three guys are going to be the bulk of the passing game, but I just like to see a legit fourth option.
I get it. I still think it can be Quez, and I'm on an island here, I believe, at this point.
No, I think it can be. I just think I'd like to see some other options too. Like I said, I look, Quez has talent. I mean, there's no question about it. He can run.
He has great speed, and I bring up the speed, and people tell me, well, you can find fast guys. Yeah, but like he's caught deep balls in the league. Like he's at least shown he can translate it.
Yeah, if you could just get a repeat of the production from 2021, you're fine with Quez. And his targets didn't go down that much. His targets.
Yeah, but that's misleading too, because they ran all that stupid crap near the line of scrimmage with him.
Yeah, that's true. But I mean, like I said, I haven't given up on Quez. I'd like to see him get another chance. I'm just not convinced after this year that he can be that guy. What about Devin Allen?
I like Devin Allen.
What about Britton Covey in the slot?
He thinks he can do it.
Yeah, he does.
I appreciate his belief in himself.
Fair.
Isaac Steele wasn't great. 3 years, 24 mil.
Which contract? I'm sorry.
Isaac.
Yeah. I mean, when it was a week, it was a weekend.
I mean, I thought he'd be top of the market when this whole thing started.
Yeah. There weren't a ton of guards. I think there weren't a lot of starting type guards out there.
Yeah. When Nick Gates, what did Nick Gates get? Let me see. I thought he was let's see. Yeah, it's not crazy. Isaac Steele's okay. I thought he'd be in the 10 mil range.
Yeah, I did too.
He's reunited. I guess it's the injury history that scares people.
Probably. And he's not, he's 30 now, right?
29.
29, 30.
So you're getting 29, 30, 31 at the end of it?
Which for an interior lineman is fine.
That's totally fine.
He's reunited with Herbie.
Nate Herbig, that's right.
Nate Herbig's a Steeler, so they're kind of rebuilding that Eagles O-line.
Not a bad idea for Andy Weidel.
Yeah, Andy Weidel is the guy bringing them in who was with the Eagles when they acquired both of them. So
yeah, follow those connections. And now you look around the league, and it's like you have all these former executives, former coaches spread out, and they're going to get their guys. So not surprising.
TJ in Chicago, yeah, there's connections. Yeah. I mean, Gannon with Kaiser and Pascal. You just keep seeing it. I mean, what's his name? Shane Steichen.
Gardner, yeah.
Yeah, so yeah, I think Isaac will play well there. And it's interesting to see like a defensive coach like Gannon, sign a guy. I mean, obviously he's not the GM, but Pascal must have impressed him.
It makes sense though. Like if a defensive coach is going to sign a receiver, it's like the tough guy who blocked the heck out of his corners downfield.
Exactly. Right. So that's the way you look at it. So yeah, good luck to all of them. Interesting. I was just looking at this before we started. The Eagles have had 14 different Pro Bowlers over the last 3 years. 12 of them are still with the team. So now they're older, so it's not necessarily a positive, but I think Hargrave and Miles would be the only ones who – so they lost a lot of guys. Most of them are mid-level guys. Most of the stars are still here, but they're obviously a lot older.
What do you think are the biggest losses?
Well, I mean, Hargrave, I think TJ's an underrated loss. I think it's hard to replace him. He was so solid, so consistent. I thought he played really well this year. Didn't make the splash plays, but he was just good every week. he was just, he was really solid. And I don't know how you replace that. And obviously Hargrave for obvious reasons. I wouldn't have given him that money just because of his age, 4 years. And I haven't looked at the structure to see if it's really, what it really is. But TJ and Hargrave, I think, and I'll tell you what, I'm not convinced they won't miss Miles. I don't know. I don't know what to make of the last 2 months of the season. He wasn't quite the same. And that's the other thing that stood out to me watching that Packers game. Man, Miles was unbelievable. I mean, he had back-to-back 20-yard runs. I think he had $150 in that game. And then you watch the Super Bowl, and he just looked like a different guy. And I'm not sure what happened to him. I really don't know. And I'll be curious to find out what Nick thinks, but he wasn't the same. But he's still a really good player, and they've got a lot of question marks at running back, and they have potential. They have guys who've had success in part-time roles, all of them. But Miles had 1,269 yards and 11 touchdowns, and they don't have a guy that you can put down for that. Well, we'll see.
Yeah.
Well, how would you answer that?
Yeah, Hargrave's at the top. I would throw CJ close to the top of that too.
Sure.
And I don't disagree with you on Miles. At least he's a proven commodity. Whereas, like right now, you're hoping Kenny Gainwell can do what he did in the playoffs in the regular season. Because aside from in the regular season, it was like almost a disappointing year for Gainwell. I like Rashad Penny as a low risk option, but can't rely on him. I think there's a good chance they still draft a running back, but even that's not guaranteed because you don't know how the draft board is going to fall.
Yeah. Yeah. So that's a good question. And I think they still have a lot of talent, but there's definitely, like you said earlier, work to do at a lot of spots.
Yeah. Got anything else here?
So I went to a concert last night. I went to see this band from Portland, Oregon called Eyelids. And Eyelids
Unlike you, by the way.
I'm sorry?
Unlike you to go to a concert.
Eyelids, they're a tremendous band. They have a great new record out, and they're from Portland, Oregon. And they have members of, their one singer and guitar player, Chris Slusarenko, was in Guided by Voices. Their other guitar player and singer, John Moen, is in the Decemberists. He's actually the drummer of the Decemberists, who are huge. And they've got Victor Krummenacher, who was a bass player in Camper Van Beethoven and Cracker. So they've got, it's like this all-star indie pop guitar band. And they played at a little place in way up in North Kensington called Jerry's on Front, which used to be a prom dress store. And it's under the L tracks in Kensington on Frankfurt. And it's owned by Chris Forsyth, who's a great guitar player in his own right, plays with Solar Motel Band. So the opening band was a band called Honey Radar from Philly, and their front man is a guy named Jason Henn, and Jason works in Center City. He's an archivist. He works on preserving historic documents and archiving them and just which is a really interesting job. So he's also a huge Eagles fan and Eagle Eye fan. So he comes out and the place is packed, and he gets on the mic and he says, "Oh, it's really nice to see Rube here, but I really wish Dave Zangaro was here."
And the whole crowd went, "Yeah, oh well." They agreed with him.
Now they just started chanting, "Dave, Dave, Dave." It was, yeah. So that was really cool. The highlight of the night. But it was a great show. Eyelids. Check out their new album. It's tremendous. Probably my album of the year through 3 months.
I will check it out.
Yeah.
All right. That's it. If you enjoy the Eagle Eye podcast, please rate and subscribe wherever you get your pods. If you're watching on YouTube, please click the like button and subscribe Dave as well. Yeah, I like that chant. That's fun. All right. We'll talk to you guys later.